Welcome to Robert's Record Corner. I'm Robert. You may have heard that the Beatles' White Album, actually called The Beatles, turned 50 recently. And we know this because everyone in the world was talking about it. New York Times put them in as a Critics' Choice album. Rolling Stone, 5 stars. The New Yorker even said that it might be the greatest rock album ever made. Which is funny because it wasn't even the greatest Beatles album. In fact, it wasn't even the greatest album of the last 6 weeks of 1968 that had a white album cover. Today, we're talking about why the Rolling Stones' Beggar's Banquet, released 2 weeks after the White Album, is a better album. Let's talk a second about 1968, because if you think the era of Trump is crazy and filled with hysteria and outrage on a daily basis, it's nothing compared to what 1968 was. In 1968, it was the worst year of the Vietnam War with the Tet Offensive, tens of thousands of civilians dying around the city of Hue. You had the assassinations of Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Lyndon Baines Johnson not running for election, Nixon becoming president. You have protests all around the world. These were very difficult times. Even in Prague, where there was hope in Prague Spring, the Soviets brought in 300,000 troops to stop that movement from happening. And the Beatles? They gave us Obla Di, Obla Da, a little sing-along satanic nursery song. Do you want to really have that humming in your head for 2 or 3 days? George Harrison's making fun of the song later in the album. They were throwing everything up on the wall that they could possibly think of. Folk country, folk hard rock, folk blues. And then what didn't stick, they just scooped up and stuffed on the album anyway. If you like the Beatles' White Album, good for you. I like it too. I like a lot of the songs, particularly the John songs. Make no mistake, they're clever. Clever like a Wes Anderson film is clever. But at what price?
Honey pie, you are making me crazy.
A music hall number just for the sake of showing that you can do that? I mean, the Kinks with the Village Green Society, released on the same day as the White Album, did music hall with purpose, going back to a period that was being vanished. Paul was just making whims in a storm. Compare this to Beggar's Banquet.
What's your name?
What you find with Beggar's Banquet is the most cohesive album the Rolling Stones ever made. It's all stripped down, back into kind of folk and blues with a very heavy acoustic sound. It begins with a testimony that these are dark times and darkness is winning, with Sympathy for the Devil. And it ends with Salt of the Earth, which is kind of a poke at working class and stay-at-home voters who are ultimately going to fail in the end. In the middle, you have songs about leaving home with no hope to come back. You have a song where the Queen is sitting around going,
What the hell is going on?
This is a band that's understanding how to do something reflective of its times, and it's so sweet.
Aww.
But most importantly, the reason why Beggar's Banquet's a better album than the White Album, because it's more important. For the first time, they're using the American producer Jimmy Miller, and they record their most iconic things. Beggar's Banquet in '68, Let It Bleed in '69, Sticky Fingers in 1971, and the greatest rock and roll album of all time, Exile on Main Street in '72. The Rolling Stones became the greatest rock and roll band, and it started in '68 with Beggar's Banquet because they decided they didn't need to follow the Beatles anymore. The Stones found themselves in '68. At the same time, they surpassed the Beatles. Yoko didn't break up the Beatles. The Beatles were destined to fail because they weren't a band anymore. It's kind of sad, isn't it? Honey pie, you are driving me crazy. See you next time on Robert's Record Corner, aka Better.
You're welcome.
Better than the Beatles.
How did you like that, PJ?
Awesome sauce.